coming up on New Day at Arirang. The G20 foreign ministers meeting kicks off in Bali, Indonesia on Thursday. South Korea's top diplomat Park Jin is set to attend, with the possibility of a trilateral meeting with his U.S. and Japanese counterparts. Meanwhile, top diplomats of the U.S. and China are to meet on the sidelines. Minutes from the Fed's June open market meeting revealed on Wednesday shows committee members sees more restrictive monetary policies moving forward if inflation fails to ease. This could mean either a 50 or 75 basis point increase later this month. The World Health Organization is set to hold another emergency meeting later this month to discuss the global monkeypox situation as the number of infections increase globally.
Hello and welcome to New Day at Arirang. It's Thursday, July 7th, 8 a.m. here in Seoul, South Korea. I'm Oh Seung.
And I'm Lee Jun-seok. Thanks for joining us this morning, because over the next hour, we'll be giving you a look at some of the biggest headlines of the day and, of course, experts' insights on key issues facing Korea and the rest of the world. Now, our top story this morning, the Group of 24 Ministers Conference is taking place in Bali this Thursday and Friday, where South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin will be in attendance.
And according to the South Korean Foreign Ministry, some of the topics to be discussed at the meeting are multilateralism and food and energy security. Meanwhile, the Japanese newspaper Yomiuri Shimbun on Wednesday reported that possible talks on the sidelines of the conference may take place between South Korea's Park Jin, U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken, and Japan's Yoshimasa Hayashi. South Korea's top diplomat, Foreign Minister Park Jin, paid a courtesy call to Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Jun-seok on Wednesday in the Southeast Asian country. According to Seoul's Foreign Ministry, the two discussed ways to promote bilateral ties in the digital sector and exchange views on regional and global issues, including Myanmar. They also agreed to bolster coordination to respond to North Korea's continued military provocations, sharing the same view that Pyongyang poses a grave threat to the international community. Earlier in the day, the top diplomat gave a keynote speech at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore. Top officials of South Korea's ruling party met to discuss some of the most pressing issues that face the Yoon administration. And it marks the first time that such a gathering was held since the new government launched in May. Our Kim Bo-kyung brings us highlights from that meeting.
Tackling the main issues that are making it hard for people to have a secure livelihood. That's mainly what was discussed at Wednesday's meeting between senior officials from the People Power Party and the government. It was the very first time that senior policymakers met since the Yoon administration's inauguration in May. Present were People Power Party Chairman Lee Jun-seok and floor leader Kwon Sung-dong, as well as Prime Minister Han Duck-soo and Presidential Chief of Staff Kim Dae-gi. The participants all agreed that the utmost priority was to stabilize people's livelihoods, which have been affected by high inflation and soaring energy prices.
If people don't have a secure livelihood, the national economy could be at risk of collapse. With sincere awareness of the crisis and by being alert, we need to be able to offer support.
To do that, officials have agreed on a number of areas of importance, including promptly enforcing measures aimed at containing soaring energy and food prices, promptly executing a second supplementary budget, and coming up with preemptive measures in August ahead of the Chuseok holiday.
We are enacting a secondary supplementary budget, including support for socially vulnerable groups. Adding on to that, using all the methods we can, such as giving out emergency relief funds, we will do our best to stabilize their livelihoods and reduce the burden of living costs.
To effectively establish and enforce such policies, both the ruling party and government officials agreed to closely cooperate with each other.
When pushing through such economic policies, communication with the National Assembly is important, and cooperation with our party beforehand is desperately needed. From now on, we will have more meetings like this to take care of the country's affairs smoothly.
Meanwhile, the name has changed into meeting between party and government, omitting the presidential office, as President Yoon underscored how government and the presidential office are one body. Promising more communication, now both party and the government aim to show unity to tackle crucial issues. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
President Yoon ordered the military to sternly respond to any North Korean provocations. This came at the Commander-in-Chief's maiden meeting with top military commanders. Kim Do-yeon shares with us his remarks.
Prompt and stern retaliation in case of any North Korean provocation. That's South Korean Commander-in-Chief Yoon as he presided over his first meeting with the nation's top military commanders on Wednesday.
국민의 안전과 재산, 영토와 주권을 지킨다는 것은 군의 기본적인 사명입니다. 안보는 결코 타협할 수 없다는 의지를 단호하게 보여주어야 합니다.
Calling for strong capabilities to deter North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, his message carries extra weight as it comes amid concerns the North could conduct its first nuclear test in 5 years. At the top brass meeting chaired by the president for the very first time at the Gaereongdae military headquarters, roughly 160 kilometers south of Seoul, they discussed Seoul's push to launch a strategic command as an overarching organ to implement its three-axis defense system aimed at countering North Korea's evolving nuclear and missile threats.
그리고 우리 군 독자적으로 한국형 삼축 체제를 구축하여 북한 핵 미사일 위협을 압도할 수 있는 능력과 태세를 갖추어 나가야 합니다.
The three-axis system refers to the Korean Massive Punishment and Retaliation, an operational plan to incapacitate the North Korean leadership in a major conflict, the Kill Chain Preemptive Strike Platform, and the Korea Air and Missile Defense System. In addition, the new commander-in-chief urged his top commanders to focus on expediting the rollout of AI-based defense systems incorporating both unmanned and manned military equipment. But above all, President Yoon reiterated his commitment to provide all the support he can to establish a defense posture in which the South Korean military can fight and win. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, minutes from the U.S. Federal Reserve's open market meeting held in mid-June has highlighted official intent to get prices under control to address stubborn inflation. Our Kim Yo-sun gives us the key takeaways from the minutes released on Wednesday.
Federal Reserve officials emphasized in June that they need to fight inflation, even if it means slowing an economy that already appears on the brink of a recession. That's according to minutes released from a Federal Open Market Committee meeting held in mid-June, where officials raised interest rates by 0.75 percentage point in the biggest hike since 1994. The minutes released Wednesday also show the policymakers decided that a further increase of 50 or 75 basis points would likely be appropriate at the July meeting, on top of the hike approved the previous month. They said that their decision to raise interest rates in June was necessary to control cost of living increases running at their highest levels since 1981. Central bankers stressed they will continue to do so until inflation gets close to their long-term goal of 2%. The document said that the officials recognize the possibility that an even more restrictive stance could be appropriate if elevated inflation pressures were to persist going forward. Following the publication of the minutes, traders on Wall Street put a seesaw day behind them to close higher on Wednesday, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average up by 0.23%. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, amid mounting fears of a global economic recession, South Korea's Kospi dipped to the lowest in 20 months. Now, the local currency slid down against the greenback in levels not seen in over a decade. Inflationary pressure is raising the possibility of a big step by the central bank as well. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
South Korean stocks dipped to their lowest in 20 months on Wednesday over fears of a global economic recession. The Kospi index fell by 2.13%, coming below the 2,300 mark for the first time since last October. Foreigners and institutions led the fall, unloading more than $720 million. Fueling the foreign selling was the dipping value of the Korean won. the local currency sank to its weakest level against the US dollar in 13 years, as low as 1,311 per dollar at one point. This comes amid downbeat data from Europe, with the euro hitting its weakest point against the US dollar in nearly 2 decades. There was also tumbling oil prices led by fears of a global recession. As a result, the country's top refiner, SK Innovation, slumped more than 5%. Amid the weakening won and rising inflation, and economists at S&P Global Ratings projected a big step by South Korea's central bank, raising its key interest rate by 0.5 percentage points in the upcoming policy meeting next week, and a combined 0.75 percentage point to as high as 2.5%. The economists attributed consumer prices jumping 6% on-year in June as a factor, the fastest rise in nearly 24 years. However, the global ratings agency said that Korea's economic growth rate will not be a concern, projecting Asia's fourth largest economy to expand by 2.6% this year. Young-eun, Arirang News.
And it's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into some of the key issues in the spotlight right now. South Korea's trade deficit for the first half of 2022 reached an all-time high. This despite the country also reporting record high exports for the same period.
With surging energy prices, will South Korea be able to recover from its deficit, and how will trade with our neighbouring countries look moving forward? To get an insight on this, we connect with Kim Se-wan, Professor at the Department of Economics at Ewha Wonmu's University. Very good morning to you, Professor.
Good morning.
And well, first off, considering the record high trade deficit in the first half of this year being mainly due to the sky-high energy prices, are the figures a major concern for the country?
Well, the Korean economy is the 10th largest one in the world in terms of GDP. So Korean economy has a buffer against short-run shocks like trade deficits for 3 months. However, if the trade deficit goes on over a year, it is going to give a serious shock to Korean economy, because Korean economy is largely dependent on foreign economies. During the first 6 months of this year, the Korean export reached an all-time half-year high, but skyrocketing energy prices sent the trade deficit of $10.3 billion, which is the highest figure for any first half period.
So I guess on the bright side, though, just based on the record high export figures for the first half, what kind of prediction would you make for the trade front in the country in the second half?
I have to say that Korea's exports are still robust. All major export items, from memory chips to automobiles, are all doing well. Actually, exports rose 5.4% on year in June on solid demand, particularly for memory chips and petroleum products. So high global energy prices of crude oil and LNG made the trade deficit for the third consecutive months. But the situation could be changed sooner or later. As we saw from previous report, Dubai crude, the Korean oil benchmark, slid 6.6% to $100.73 a barrel yesterday. That is down from more than $120 a barrel a month ago. Oil price can go down further on investor concerns that slowing economic growth could limit energy consumption. So if this situation goes on in the second half of this year, declining oil and gas prices will lessen Korean trade deficit.
And Professor, well, the Yoon administration's been pushing for improved relations with Japan, and we saw a meeting of business leaders take place as well over the past week. And well, would South Korea really be able to improve its trade relations with Japan, and what would that mean for the country?
What we need to know about the trade with Japan is that Korean economy has over 20 straight years of trade deficit with Japan. It means that Japan would be the only country that Korean economy has a continuous trade deficit, except oil-producing countries. As of 2020, Japan is the 5th largest export partner and third largest import partner to Korean economy, which is very important country to Korean economy. And if we take a look at the big picture of the trade between Korea and Japan, Japan provides high-tech key parts and materials to Korean companies, high-tech final products like memory chips, automobile and smartphone, and so on. So the economic relation between the two countries is helping each other relationship or complementary relationship. It means that there is a huge possibility that two countries can develop much more business opportunities in global markets. But before that, actually, export restrictions to Korean economy on key materials in chip production, which was imposed by Abe administration in 2019, should be lifted.
Let's talk about China this time, because China has, let's face it, been for a really long time one of the major trading partners for South Korea. How's the situation right now amid the pandemic, and how do you forecast the trade between the two countries moving forward?
We know that China is number one trading partner to Korean economy. About 25% of Korean export go to China, and 22% of Korean imports come from China. So for the last 20 years, actually, Korean economy has been much benefited from China. For example, in 2020, which is the first year of COVID pandemic outbreak, Korean exports began to pick up rapidly due to Chinese economic recovery from pandemic. Since then, exports to China became one of the strongest momentum to revive Korean economy. But as of now, Korean economy faces serious uncertainties in trading with China over the conflicts between US and China for gaining the global hegemony. It is going to be a serious challenge to Korean economy in expanding trade with China. So there should be a careful and balanced trade strategies between US and China.
Well, thank you very much for your insights today, Professor Kim. We hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you for having me today.
All right, with that, it's going to wrap up the first half of New Day at Arirang.
But coming up in the second half, we talk about bilateral ties between South Korea and Ecuador and how the two sides can deepen their relations to cooperate on future challenges. We'll be joined by Ecuador's Vice Foreign Minister during Global Insights, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
Share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean New Day. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis, pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
넌 볼 수 없고 가질 수 없어 뚝뚝 눈물 쏟아내도 뜨거운 자태 한번 비추지 않고 내게만 까칠한 그녀는 유명한 서울의 별야 어딨나 In your eye 걔와 함께면 넌 디스토피아 내 발걸음 따라오면 유토피아 나의
I feel so good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good, but right now, maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now, forever.
And welcome back to the second half of New Day at Arirang. The World Health Organization will hold an emergency meeting on monkeypox during the week beginning July 18th at the latest.
That's according to Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus on Wednesday. At the meeting, a committee will advise on whether to declare the outbreak a global health emergency, the WHO's highest alert level. At its previous meeting in June, the committee said that the outbreak was not yet considered a health emergency. However, according to the WHO, more than 6,000 cases of monkeypox have been reported in 58 countries during the current outbreak. The ruling People Power Party chairman Lee Jun-seok will face his party's Independence Ethics Committee at 7 p.m. Thursday over sexual bribery allegations made against him. With the police investigation underway, the focus of the meeting is an alleged attempt by Lee to cover up the evidence. The committee will decide whether any such attempt was harmful to the party as a whole. Lee, who insists his innocence, says he will not accept any punishment. Any punishment stronger than a warning would damage Lee's political career and prompt the PPP to elect a new chairman, as Lee's term is set to end in June 2023. The meeting marks the first time in South Korean history that a ruling party chair has been referred to an ethics committee.
Now, Joon has become the very first person of Korean descent to win the world's most prestigious award for young mathematicians, the Fields Medal. Now, the Princeton University professor spoke to reporters in Seoul via video from Helsinki. Our Shin Se-byuk zooms in on his story.
For the first time in history, a mathematician of Korean descent has received the prestigious Fields Medal. After being born in the U.S., growing up and studying in Korea, 39-year-old Joon was named as one of the 4 recipients of the 2022 Fields Medal that is often called the Nobel Prize in Mathematics. The award goes to mathematicians under the age of 40 who have made significant contributions to the field. Ho was honored for his studies in the field of combinatorial algebraic geometry and successfully proving Rota's conjecture and Reed's conjecture. His work relates to an area of math that figures out the number of ways things can be shuffled and can be applied in many areas, including semiconductor design and machine learning. A video conference was held in Seoul on Wednesday, where Ho detailed the story of his life leading up to receiving the Fields Award.
I only spend 4 hours a day doing research. The rest, I spend time with my family taking care of my kids, doing household chores. That's how I refresh myself. And then the next day, the same again.
Noting there are a lot of promising mathematicians in South Korea, Ho said it is important to create an environment which is conducive to research on the science of abstract objects that rely on logic rather than on observation as a standard of truth.
I hope there will be an atmosphere where they can relax and stably pursue long-term projects instead of feeling pressure to come up with findings in the short term.
Joon is slated to arrive in Korea this Friday and will stay at the Korea Institute for Advanced Study for the rest of the summer. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
It's time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. With efforts to bolster cooperation between South Korea and Latin America, a forum was held this week in the southern port city of Busan. The 2-day Korea-LAC Future Cooperation Forum was co-hosted by Seoul's Foreign Ministry and Busan City, gathering over 200 participants, including diplomats, people in business, and experts from 15 Central and South American nations. Topics included expanding cooperation in mineral, energy, digital, and infrastructure sectors. And South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin has also been holding talks with ministers and vice ministers from 8 countries from the region to discuss bilateral ties. And today we have the honour of speaking with Luis Valdivieso, Vice Minister of the Foreign Affairs of Ecuador, and we welcome him in the studio today. A very warm welcome to you, Vice Minister. Thank you for joining us here in Seoul.
Thank you very much. Good morning. It's an honour to be here in Arirang with you.
Well, it's an honour to have you on our show. And, well, I believe you've been in the southern port city of Busan until just yesterday. And, well, you've been in Seoul and Busan, so how has your experience been in the country so far?
Actually, very nice. You know, I would like to also express my gratitude to the government of Korea and the people of Korea. You make us feel at home here in this country. We feel very fine, and very important meetings actually in Busan. We had 2 days meetings. We have the forum, but also we had bilateral meetings with other countries from Latin America, but also with the authorities of Busan. We had with the mayor of Busan, Mr. Park, and also with the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Korea, Mr. Park also. We had a very good meeting, very useful, and also to strengthen the relation between Korea and Latin American countries and to each of our countries. We have bilateral meetings with the Korean authorities to strengthen cooperation, business, trade, investments, so actually very fruitful meetings.
Right, and I believe later in the day you have a meeting with your counterpart at Seoul's Foreign Ministry, and well, of course you'll be talking about our very special bilateral ties. And South Korea and Ecuador's relationship goes back decades, and it's actually a very special relationship because Quito helped Seoul really rebuild from the ashes of the Korean War, and Ecuador has been a great friend to South Korea over the past 60 years. And well, what significance does South Korea have to Ecuador?
Yes, well, we are celebrating now our 60th anniversary of the official relations between Korea and many of the Latin American countries, among those Ecuador, 60 years, so which is quite good. But also our relations, bilateral relations, they come from before, also as a strong relations. In the 50s, during the Korean War, Ecuador was member of the Security Council in the UN, and we had a strong position also supporting Korea during the war. And like you mentioned, also we sent food and medicine during the war from Ecuador to Korea. And that relation has been stronger and stronger during the years. I think it's very important to mention also the first car from Hyundai to be exported from here to the world came to Ecuador. It came to the city of Guayaquil, a pony, Hyundai pony.
That's right.
And yes, and they have brought back to the museum of Hyundai the car to Korea. So that's the relation between our countries. And nowadays we are strengthening the relations with trade, with investment, with cooperation, which is so important. Korea is a good example to be followed by countries in South America and I think all over the world.
Right, and of course Ecuador is a very resource-rich country, while South Korea has virtually none. We do have technology though, so there are a lot of areas that the two countries could really talk about, and I believe some of these issues may have been addressed at the forum you were just at. But moving forward though, in light of the global challenges we face in trade and supply chains, how could South Korea and Ecuador really work together to be able to really strengthen their economic security?
Well, in different areas. I mentioned that in the 50s we were members of the Security Council at the UN. We will be back to the Security Council as members, no permanent members, next year from 2023 to 2024. And Korea will be also member of the Security Council in 2024. So we will have 1 year together. So in multilateralism, we are working together, not only in the UN, but other fields. We are working together in different international organizations with Korea. And in the bilateral relations, the same. Cooperation in different fields, agriculture field, we have also in the environment field. It's very important that we have this cooperation. You know, we have the Galapagos Island, that is a World Heritage declared by UNESCO, and we've been talking with Korea also to work together with cooperation to keep the marine reserve that Ecuador enlarged. We have already, we had from before a very extensive marine reserve in the Galapagos, and we have extended last January to 60,000 more kilometers. So it's around 200,000 square kilometers, the reserve marine. And we are talking with Korea also to keep the control and supervise this marine reserve. That's environment. And we have other fields that we are cooperating to, agriculture and international world too. We are facing right now huge problems. We have the war in Ukraine. We have very similar positions. We have the same principles between Ecuador and Korea: democracy, respect to human rights, and we are working together. For instance, in the international sphere about the Ukrainian war, or the war in Ukraine, and we have had very strong positions condemning the invasion from Russia to Ukraine, and also helping like you say, the trade after the problems that we are facing because of the war. It's important. It's important that countries, we get together. So we keep trade going on, we keep investments going on, we keep businesses going on.
Exactly, and well, what potential do you see for South Korean businesses hoping to maybe invest in Ecuador or expand their presence there?
They're already investing in Ecuador. Main Korean companies are in Ecuador, and we see a great potential. We talk in Busan. We will be talking today, like you mentioned, here in the bilateral meetings that we have at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, with the possibility of opening, for instance, a big car industry company from, of course, Korea in Ecuador. That will be it will be an honor, and we will be very happy to do so. I think there is the potential, there is the stability, and there is the will, political will, also to do such a business.
Right, as you said, very common values on the rule of law, democracy, and human rights. And well, as we share many of these similar values, what are some ways that South Koreans and Ecuadorians could really deepen their cultural exchanges as well, from people to people?
Exactly, and we have a strong cooperation from people to people. I think it could be even stronger. You know, we have, because of the celebration of the 60 years anniversary, we have a lot of cultural exchange between Ecuador and Korea. We have already 2 centers in Ecuador, one in Guayaquil and Quito, the main cities, or the most populated cities in Ecuador. We have also Korean centers where you can learn about Korean culture and also the language. So that's very important, and we are happy to do so. We have exhibitions from the main artists from Ecuador here in Korea, and also Korean artists in Ecuador. So that way we have the exchange between people and people. And Korea is helping also a lot Ecuador about human mobility. Our Ministry for Foreign Affairs, you know, we take care of foreign affairs and also human mobility. Ecuador is receiving Venezuelan citizens. Because of the problems in Venezuela, we have received around 500,000 of Venezuelans. And Korea is helping also to help us, the Venezuelans in Ecuador. And we are very happy to tell that. Right. So the relations actually are strong, but of course, you know, we can go stronger and stronger.
Right, so cooperating in the human mobility front as well. And well, this might be a very superficial layer to the relationship between the two countries, but when South Koreans think about Ecuador, we normally think of the wonderful coffee, the horticultural industry, the beautiful flowers, the Ecuadorian roses, right? And I believe that the two countries will resume their trade talks soon. And well, what are ways that they can really deepen their trade relationship?
Yes, the trade agreement is something that we should have it some years ago, many years ago. Unfortunately, in 2016, we stopped the negotiations, unfortunately. But we have reopened. We are, again, actually this month in July, a delegation from Ecuador will come to have the first round of negotiations for the trade agreement. We are quite happy. It's something that we need to have the free trade agreement with Korea. And of course, the agreement will help also to strengthen the trade, investment, and business relations between the two countries.
Right, and would this increased South Korean presence be welcomed in Ecuador? How are South Koreans generally perceived in your country?
Well, I think we see Korea, as I said before, as an example to be followed. The development in Korea that we see, you know, is something that, again, you know, is an example. It's an example for Ecuador, it's an example for the whole world, and we have to look at it. We should learn more about Korea. We should learn more about the Korean culture. That's why we have these 2 centers. But it's something that we are doing so. I think we need more exchange, cultural exchange between the 2 countries, also to learn more about Korea. But I think it's coming. It's coming, and we are happy to do so.
Right, and in terms of diplomacy, global diplomacy really, it seems that Ecuador and South Korea, as you mentioned, we share many similar global values. And in terms of really promoting multilateralism, which we seem to be rather short of these days, given all the geopolitical conflicts and just these trade risks as well. What are ways that the two countries can really increase or strengthen the sense of multilateralism in the world? And what kind of position do you think they play as many say middle power countries?
Yes, well, as you mentioned, we share the same values about human rights, democracy, liberties, but also, from our side, from the Ecuadorian side, our foreign policy is based in peace. We want a diplomacy for peace, for trade. We want a diplomacy also to change for good the environment, to have this ecological transition. Actually, we have a minister and a ministry for ecological transition also in Ecuador, and these same values and all the basis for our diplomacy, for our foreign policy, we can work together with Korea, and actually it doesn't happen with all the countries in the world. With some countries you can work in some fields, with in other fields, but with Korea actually we can work in all fields. That is the base of our foreign policy, and we are doing so in the multilateralism world, but also in bilateral relations. So I'm going to talk about that, these issues, also these topics with the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs today at the meeting of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs.
I see. Well, we've celebrated 60 years of official bilateral relations between South Korea and Ecuador, and of course you said that it actually stretches back to before that. But in terms of moving forward into the future, how do you see the bilateral relationship really evolving from this point onwards?
Well, I see it in the two ways mainly. Well, of course, in general with multilateralism and bilateral cooperation, but also working in specific topics. Environment, I think, is something very important. Ecuador is quite committed with the environment, and also we are members at the moment of the negotiation committee that will work with a treaty on plastic pollution. Ecuador is member of the committee now. We would like to chair the committee. We hope to have the support of Korea for chairing the committee, and I think it's something that we could work together. Also in the other field, that is trade, investments, business, we can do, and we can even strengthen that relation with Korea. I think that's the future, and I think we should go and look for it.
Right, and well, before you go, well, you've been to South Korea's two largest cities, really, Seoul and the southern port city of Busan, and of course Quito is one of the most stunning capitals in Latin America. And well, for any South Korean visiting, what would you recommend as Vice Foreign Minister?
Well, they are very welcome to Ecuador. We have invited your authorities. We had a meeting also with President Yoon yesterday. We hope to see the President, the Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Korean authorities in Ecuador, and the people of Korea also visiting our country. We are warm people. We are opening our doors also for tourism. And we were talking with Mayor of Busan, Mr. Park. He will also like to visit Ecuador. We hope that will be soon, and we would like to also to strengthen relation between local governments, between cities, between Busan in this case and Ecuadorian cities.
And media exchange too, of course.
Exactly.
You could invite myself and my co-anchor. We'd be delighted
if
given the opportunity. But
you are very welcome to Ecuador.
Well, thank you very much for joining us in studio today, Vice Minister. It was a pleasure and a privilege to have you on our programme.
It has been very nice to be here with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, at the UN High-Level Political Forum for Sustainable Development, K-pop group aespa called for action on setting goals for sustainable development. During the forum's opening session, member Giselle introduced the group's 4 virtual counterparts that exist in a virtual world and stressed the importance of preserving the real world with as much effort as is put into the metaverse. The singer highlighted that future generations must support sustainable development goals in order to protect the planet. After this speech, aespa performed their single Next Level, and the band is scheduled to release its second EP called Girls on Friday. Now, airport bus services here in Seoul were virtually shut down in the pandemic. With the distancing measures lifted, passengers have gone way up. The figures in the capital rose to 57,000, up 2.7 times compared to January. Ridership is also up on Seoul's international taxis for foreign tourists, about 1,300 in April to about 2,000 in May and June. Now, before April, international taxis had been repurposed to pick up travelers at the airport during the pandemic to take them straight to self-isolation. There'll be more airport buses and international taxis on the roads as tourist numbers spike.
For a look at news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley standing by at the Arirang newsroom. Very good morning to you.
Good morning to you guys.
Good morning to you, Matthew. Let's start off by taking a look at the UK, as from what I understand, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is really under pressure to resign here.
That's right, and this follows the resignation of the Health Secretary and Chancellor on Tuesday amid a wave of further resignations and letters of no confidence that poured in from junior ministers and MPs on Wednesday. More than 40 ministers and aides have quit since Tuesday, and even some of the PM's closest allies, such as Home Secretary Priti Patel, have reportedly urged him to resign. But the Prime Minister has refused to step down, citing the Ukraine war and economic pressures. Johnson has said his departure would be irresponsible. The Prime Minister has also sacked Michael Gove, a senior figure in the Conservative Party and supporter of Johnson. This was after he asked the PM to quit. Johnson has also shot down questioning about calling a snap election, saying the earliest time frame for such a vote would be 2024. The developments follow the latest scandal to rock Johnson's government, with MPs angry at his handling of sexual misconduct allegations against Conservative Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher. The heads of US and UK intelligence agencies have raised concerns about Chinese espionage and warned business leaders of efforts by Beijing to steal their technology to gain a competitive advantage. MI5 Director General Ken McCallum and FBI Director Christopher Wray held a rare joint address on Wednesday at the UK intelligence agency's headquarters. They said Beijing is conducting a large-scale economic and political offensive that takes billions of dollars worth of advanced technology and attempts to influence elections. The head of MI5 said investigations into Chinese commercial espionage has increased sevenfold since 2018 and looks set to grow further. And the FBI director criticized Beijing's efforts to silence dissent abroad. The 13th UEFA Women's European Championship kicked off Wednesday with a sold-out opening match between hosts England and Austria. Amid record-breaking support, the competition will feature 16 teams and 31 matches, with the final of the tournament to be played on July 31st. So far, ticket sales have surpassed 450,000, almost double the previous record of 240,000 sold when the Netherlands hosted the competition 5 years ago. The championship was originally scheduled to take place in July last year, but was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. England defeated Austria by a 0-0, with Beth Mead scoring in the first half in front of almost 69,000 fans. Thousands of festival goers in Spain packed the streets of Pamplona as they celebrated the first San Fermin bull running festival since the outbreak of COVID-19. Taking place on a rainy Wednesday, participants filled Pamplona's town hall square to open the event that runs until July 14th. The festival sees 8 bull runs in total over an 800-meter stretch of Pamplona's Old Quarter, with the first run scheduled for Thursday. Each run features 6 fighting bulls and typically lasts for 3 to 5 minutes as participants attempt to avoid being trampled. However, dozens of animal rights activists protested the event on Tuesday in the city, calling the bull run prehistoric while dressed in dinosaur costumes. The festival is not without danger, with at least 16 runners having lost their lives over the years.
Good morning. Hopefully the sudden downpours in the capital area late last night didn't wake you up. Well, monsoon rain returns today. Central parts of the country are forecast to receive heavy rainfall again this time, while rain starting from central regions during the first half of the day will gradually spread to the rest of the country as the day goes on and will linger through tomorrow. Heat-wise, well, today is Seoul according to the seasonal indicator, and it's the day when the heat really sets in. But you know, we have been dealing with intense heat for a while, and today's rain really will not give that much relief from the heat, but will add humidity up to 100%. Another tropical night in many areas. Seoul beginning the day nearing 27 degrees Celsius this morning, and lots of clouds to cover up the country. Then highs will be a couple of degrees lower this afternoon though. Seoul going up to 30 degrees. Daegu and Jeju still scorching hot at 34 degrees Celsius. Rain lets up from the west tomorrow and returns again early next week. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
Well, Soo-young, I had a chance to watch your Global Insight with the Vice Foreign Minister. I could have noticed that you invited me to the trip to Ecuador.
Yeah, I mean, I know you appreciate good coffee and good weather.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the weather temperatures. It does look a little bit cooler than here in South Korea, so
definitely.
Maybe definitely a destination that I might look at to cool off a little bit, right?
And avoid this monsoon season, this humidity that we've been experiencing, but hopefully that will go away after the rain. But
that's right.
Well, that wraps up our newscast for this hour, but we will be back tomorrow for our Friday's edition of New Day at Arirang.
Thanks as always for tuning in with us, but also stick around for more updates in our later newscasts. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are, and as always, take care.
Mount Everest, the roof of the world, standing 8,848 meters tall. Glaciers covering Everest are disappearing. A recently published report says glaciers covering the world's highest mountain are melting. It takes just 25 years for glaciers that have formed on Everest over the span of 2,000 years to lose around 55 meters of thickness. The reason for why ice on Mount Everest is melting is none other than global warming. The more glaciers melt, the more dangerous it is for humans. When soil and rocks become exposed due to melting ice, climbing Everest can be more life-threatening. Less water in streams originating from glaciers can result in water shortages. When there's not enough water to drink, grow crops, or generate power, local residents can end up becoming climate refugees. One more thing. Water from melting ice can cause flooding. In fact, flash floods in the Himalayas have occurred multiple times already. These natural disasters, dubbed glacier tsunamis, incur not only property damage but human casualties as well. If we continue using fossil fuels and do not conserve energy, our planet will become warmer and warmer, and Everest glaciers could vanish forever. Protect the future of Everest. Save the environment. For the sake of Earth, for our sake. One more step for a better future. The Earth and Environment Report.
This season on Arirang TV, we have a new program, What Is? The show will pose important